Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cycle Podcast. I am excited that we have another wonderful guest today. Her name is Dani. She's here with us from Iowa, and we're recording both of us on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. So, Dani, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Melissa. I'm excited.
We look forward to getting to know you a little bit better, but why don't we start off by just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything and everything you want to add non-endo related.
Okay, yep, I'm Dani. I'm 30 years old. I live in Des Moines, Iowa, and I enjoy anything outdoors, so cycling, bonfires, hiking, camping, all that stuff. All my family's in Iowa. I was out in Colorado for a little bit, but it was pretty expensive, so I came back and wanted to be closer to family too. So, but yeah, and then I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and I was starting to research it because I had no idea. I hadn't even heard the term before. And so I came across your page on Instagram, and it was the one that was kind of the most informational. So kept following. I saw you were having a thing and asking people to kind of come tell their story, because you're kind of looking for people of all journeys, those that are new to it, those that have been dealing with it for a long time. So I thought, why not? I think it needs to be talked about more, because I had no idea. And I still am learning a lot. I still don't. There's so many things I don't know about it. So,
well, thank you for being so willing to share your story to help other people. It really means a lot to the community and everybody who's listening. And, you know, the biggest thing that I've discovered throughout the years, but even more just doing this podcast, is everyone's story is so different. There literally has not been a story that has been the same. And so it's so helpful to just talk to multiple people, because this disease just does not manifest itself in a cookie cutter fashion. So we really appreciate it.
right.
Well, I always like to start from the top.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Happy.
Yeah, thank you. How old were you when you started your period, and was it painful early on, or, you know, do you recall kind of the beginning part?
Yeah, it was, I'm pretty sure I was in 5th grade, and I remember it happening in like the middle of the night, and it didn't hurt, but it was one of those things where I realized, like, oh, like this is it. And so I remember, my mom's a nurse, and I remember waking her up in the middle of the night, and I think I was like, Mom, I think I just started my period. I think I was kind of like all just bummed, you know, like,
Yeah.
it's here. But no, it wasn't painful or anything. And so growing up with one, I mean, it was just kind of your typical, what you hear. You just get, you know, you get your mild cramps leading up to it. Usually my cramps always were consistent with like early, either like a couple days before I'm about to start, or even like the first or second day into it. So, but it was nothing that wasn't manageable for me. You know, either like a bowel movement, ibuprofen, Tylenol, or a heating pad. Like any of those things always took care of my cramps usually. So, and then, you know, after my period was done, I didn't have any other issues. And then, so just fast forward up until last year, about May of 2019, I started having some like pelvic pain, more so like down in my lower right, but then I was also having like this dull lower back pain all at the same time. And so it's kind of, I'm like, that's kind of odd, whatever. But again, I was just thinking like, okay, maybe it's my period. I don't know, like if I wasn't really stressed last year at that time, but I was like, maybe I internally am stressed about something. I don't know. I just was trying to like figure out anything, you know, what was causing this, and kind of let it go. But like I said, I love bicycling. And so I think got on my bike like 4 times last year. And so,
and typically, the group I bike. Yeah. How much would you typically ride? Like, and I want to back up really quick. In high school or like college, or anything, like from 15 to 29 or 28 when this started to happen to you, so almost 15 years, did you ever like miss school because of a period? Did you, or anything like that? Or was it all just like, nope, I take my Advil, I'm fine? Did you ever go on birth control, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I honestly, I mean, I'd get cramps, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't anything I couldn't really tolerate.
Sure.
I mean,
It didn't take you
it's
out of
not
commission.
fun,
Yeah.
Nope. And I played basketball and volleyball and ran, I did
Yeah.
sports in high school, and then I played basketball 2 years in college, and it didn't keep me from practicing. It didn't keep me from playing games.
Okay.
But I was also taking those measures or doing those things of like, okay, we have a game today. I'm going to take ibuprofen. Even if I didn't have cramps at the time, I was still going to take ibuprofen before a game just to like, hope I don't.
Right.
But
So
again, it
that, I
wasn't,
mean, that's that was
yeah,
pre-preparing though. Like I would say probably
yep,
most people with their period at that age probably don't do that. I don't know because I have endo too, so I have no idea.
yeah,
But you kind of like
right.
knew a way to manage it.
Right. And my thing was, because obviously I would, back then, so I was like 10, oh man, yeah, 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. It was just more of me like, hey, I have a game. I don't want to like not play well. I don't want to,
Right.
tell my coach I'm not feeling good. It was more of just, I wanted to play and
Yeah.
try to play well. And so that's the only reason. It wasn't because, oh, maybe I didn't even know what endometriosis
No,
was.
of course. Yeah.
It was just not listening to me. So,
Did you have
no,
any
it was just all
other,
in my mindset was,
yeah, stay ahead of it.
mm-hmm,
Did you have any
yep.
other like weird symptoms in those 15 years that now maybe like bowel issues or stomach issues or anything else? Or did you feel like, no, I was very active, I was very healthy until last year?
Yeah. And now that you bring that up, and I've never thought about it, but I've always had, not a weak stomach, but I'm very sensitive to like fast food, greasy foods, which I guess is a good problem to have, because I'm not saying I don't ever, I do, but I tend to, especially the older I get, I tend to stay away from that food anyway.
Yeah.
Because I know like it's going to upset my stomach.
Yeah.
So I guess, like I said, it's kind of a good problem to have, but at the same time, you just mentioned that, and I don't know if that would have any relation to endometriosis. And that would be something for me to look into, because, how they don't know when a growth of endo starts. My doctor told me last year, like, hey, this could have started when you're in middle school. It could have started high school. It could have just picked up last year and grew really fast. Like,
Yeah.
So I've never even considered that, but it is interesting. So I kind of want to look into that, because
Yeah. Make sure you mention that just to your doctor too, that you feel like you have a more sensitive stomach.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
Interesting
really
to think about,
yeah.
a lot of times what we talk about on this podcast too is like none of us correlated anything, because you would never think like something that had to do with your period would then have to do with your stomach or like your chest
Right.
or your diaphragm or your sciatica. No one
Yep.
in the beginning would ever think, why would you even think that would be related until you actually
Right.
learn more about the disease. So that's why I always ask those questions, because sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I really had a lot of stomach problems
Yep.
in high school and college. And so that's why I like to ask, but please
Yeah.
continue from where you were. So you're a very avid cyclist, and in 2019, you only went out a few times because you were really hurting in pain. Tell us about that pain.
So yeah, my friends, so we do, I don't know if you've heard, there's this big bike ride it got canceled this year because of COVID, but Ragbri. So it's just it's this huge bicycling race. People from out of state come to do it. You start on the west side of Iowa, and then you bike within a week, you bike to the eastern side. So it's one river to the next river. Anyway, so we always train for that. We're always getting tons of miles in leading up to that. And so, but last year my friends will bike literally almost every day. There's somebody riding. And so I think I only rode like 4, maybe 5 times last year, if that, because I was in so much pain and I didn't know what's going on. And I'm like, and then the weird thing was it kind of came and went, but it wasn't really on track with my period. It was when I was having my period, but then I'd also kind of still have it when I wasn't on my period. So that's what was kind of throwing me off a little. And then, so that about May is kind of when that started taking place. And I remember my roommate, I woke her, I felt terrible because she had to catch a like early flight she had to get up at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, but I had a panic attack in the middle of the night, and I was keeled over in pain. And I was thinking it was my period, like a really bad cramp. And I remember telling my roommate, I'm like, I know what a period cramp is. Like I've never had one this bad. And, I was like, nothing is, easing the pain. And anyway, so it just eventually passed after probably about an hour. I was able to go back to sleep and whatnot, and it kind of was fine. And then fast forward to July, was going to work, and I called. I used to work part-time at a pub restaurant, and my cousin owns it. And so I was just going to work that day, and she kind of knew I was having these issues. And I called her in the morning, and I was in so much pain. And she said she could just tell in my voice. It was a Saturday morning. She goes, Dani, I think we need to take you in. Like, she's like, you've been dealing with this. Like, you can't even move. You're telling me you can't even get up right now. And she said, I mean, she wasn't even worried about, like, obviously don't come in for work, but she's like, I think I need to take you in. So she and another friend of mine helped me downstairs. Like, I couldn't get down 2 flights of stairs. It was crazy.
Was it back pain, cramps? Tell us, like, describe the pain so we know.
Sure.
So, and starting like in May, right? This is when it really kind of started more for you. Tell us, like, it started in May and then it got progressively worse, it sounds like.
Yep. So the pain it was right in my pelvic area, but kind of over by my appendix.
Okay.
And it was like super sharp pain. And it was just like when I would step, like the vibration of your foot hitting, like just impacting the ground, just like
feel like electricity. Yeah.
Yeah. And when my cousin was taking me in that morning, just any little bump in her car that we hit, like the smallest bump, it just, oh my gosh, it just jolted with pain.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in, and we're kind of laughing about it, because I try to, like, there's part of me too that I'm like, oh, it's whatever. Like, this is just almost funny, like I'm walking into this urgent care, and I'm like, there's like a 90-year-old woman that's better posture than I do right now, just because I like felt like I was just like keeled over, and
right.
And we're laughing about it, but I was in pain and I couldn't move. And I told him, I'm like, what is going on? And so anyway, we went in, and the doctor, we did the urine sample and everything. Sorry, I forgot to tell you too. I was also having that lower left dole pain, and that was just irritating. It wasn't like a terrible pain, or it wasn't shooting pain. It's just a very dull ache, but it was consistent. It was every day. I went to the chiropractor a handful of times to try to fix it, and he was saying I had like it was some type of nerve or a disc or something that just needed to be adjusted, and that ended up not being it, but I didn't know,
Of course.
So anyway, yeah. So that's so when I went into that urgent care, that's kind of what got the ball rolling a little bit. But they thought it was appendicitis, or pre-appendicitis is what they were calling it. But being Saturday, and I was thinking, like, financially, he wanted me to go get a CAT scan at the hospital across the street. And I go, can I do this like Monday? And he goes, well, he's like, I wouldn't advise that, because as everyone knows, if your appendix bursts in the next 48 hours, he's like, you're going to be in a whole lot worse situation than you are now. And so I was like, okay, obviously that's a no-brainer. So I went to the ER, and I was there 7 hours just doing tests, and they were drawing blood, urine samples. They did the CAT scan, and they misdiagnosed it as a PID, which is a pelvic inflammatory disease,
disorder,
is what they're calling it. Yeah. And I was like, what? How do you even get that? Like there's no way I don't know. I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. But that's what they diagnosed me with. And so he put me on 2 weeks of antibiotics. And it did help. And maybe a lot of it was a mental thing, like, oh, I'm taking antibiotics, and your mind is powerful. And so if you think sometimes when you think like, yeah, I'm feeling better, you can kind of trick yourself into thinking you're getting better. And it did. The pain kind of went away after a while, about a couple weeks, 3 weeks. I'm thinking, okay, we're getting better. But that back pain wasn't going away, and they didn't even address the back pain. So, because at that time I told him, like, hey, I'm seeing my chiropractor, and
right, of course,
So we're like, okay, whatever. So then let's see, that was July 20th. And then fast forward to September, the same thing happened again. I went to a college football game. It was an afternoon game. So my friends and I started tailgating like early in the morning. I mean, 6, 7, and I was feeling fine. And then we ended up going back
Dani,
to one of my friend's house to, sorry.
That's okay. Quick
I'm
question.
getting a call. I got to end this. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm not the interview. I'm just going to hit decline.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Quick question. Were you on your period when these episodes were happening?
You know, I don't remember. The second time I know I wasn't.
Okay.
And I don't remember the first time.
That's fine.
I don't think
just
I
curious.
was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I don't think I was.
Okay. So you're tailgating and you feel fine. And then all of a sudden,
felt fine.
Bam.
Yeah. So then we went back to watch the game at one of our friends' houses. And I remember I was starting to fall asleep on the couch and I just woke up, like just woke up in pain, and it was the same pain. So at this point I'm like, okay, this is getting consistent. There's something that's causing this. And in my mind, I'm like, it's something. I don't know if it was with my period or not, but I was like, what is going on? I had no idea, but I knew there was one thing that was causing this, because the pain was consistent. It was in the same spot. So I went and I called my mom first, because like I mentioned, she's a nurse, and kind of just, before jumping to any conclusions, she's like, well, maybe you just want to go and she called the 24-hour on-call nurse,
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And then I told her my symptoms and that I had been in the ER about back in July. And she's like, yeah, I think maybe you should probably just go back into the ER. And so I did. And that's where that ER doctor, he sent me home. He said pre-appendicitis too. He sent me home with a very high dose of ibuprofen. And I remember my mom was with me, and she was kind of frustrated too, because she's like, this is something else. Like, it's not, I've been doing ibuprofen for 4 or 5 months now. So
yeah. And
so that was really
pre-appendicitis
frustrating.
doesn't come and go, I assume, right? Like, I don't think wouldn't it just stay consistent and then you'd get appendicitis? I don't know, but it's weird.
Right. I don't know either. So, very weird. So, I have to give a lot of credit to my gynecologist, because he was the one that got the ball rolling really fast. And he was like, we're going to get this figured out, and you're not going to go home with not knowing or whatever. And so
did you reach out to him though? Like, you went to the ER, but then did you go see him and be like, something's wrong, or?
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to my gynecologist, and I was due for my yearly pap smear, or not yearly, but just my pap smear. I hadn't had one for a long time. So I'm like, I need to get that done anyway. And at this point you're just like, let's just do all tests, any tests. Like, let's just try to get this figured out. So go to what doctors we need to. So I went to my gynecologist, and we went in there. They tried to do a vaginal ultrasound, and then he did the pap smear, and he ran all these tests. He's like, no, and he did the PID test. He's like, you are clear of all of that. And so that shot out that first doctor's. He's like, no, your test came back negative for everything. Like, right. You don't have a PID. You don't. And I was like, I know I knew that I couldn't have, but again, I'm not a doctor. So I'm like, okay. So then, he came back into the waiting room, or the room I was in, and he goes, hey, Dani, do you want to take another, or do an ultrasound to check out that 5 millimeter cyst from the ER? And I didn't even know about the cyst. Well, that was what was causing my back pain.
Of course.
And they never told that. Yeah, they never told that to me at the hospital. And then, but honestly, when he said that, I'm like, well, that explains my back pain. And he goes, well, yeah. He's like, it's 5 centimeters. And so then I was like, well, yeah, let's check it out. So that's where they did the vaginal ultrasound again, to kind of wave the wand and see where it was at, and if it was growing. And it had gotten to like a 7.1 or 7.2 now at this point. So just within, so that was July, and this was a little before September. It was September.
Yeah, and that's
so within
that's the size of a
2
grapefruit.
months.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, that's like the size of a grapefruit or
Yeah.
bigger, and your ovary is the size of a walnut. So of course you were in pain, you poor thing.
Yeah. So, yep. So that I was kind of relieved though that he said that. 'Cause I'm like, well, that explains my back pain. So yeah, he's like, so then he found out that it had grown in about 6 weeks. That thing had grown like 2.1 or 2.2 centimeters. And so he goes, well, we need to get that taken out. And I go, yeah, of course. And then at the same time, he said, you know, he was kind of like, if you're having pain in that appendix, like you don't really need it. Let's just go in and get that appendix taken out too. Cause he didn't know endometriosis yet. Cause as you guys know, like you have to get in there to really find out, to be diagnosed with endometriosis. So
did he say the word endometriosis to you at all?
Yeah, he had mentioned it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but
That's
he didn't.
good.
Yep, he had mentioned it, so he was aware of it. But you know, it's just, I think the fact that 2 ER doctors told me pre-appendicitis, and I think he was maybe as a respect thing or not. I don't know what it was, but he just kind of was like, you don't really need your appendix. If your pain's over there, like let's just go ahead and get that removed. If you're, I'm like, that's fine. And so anyway, okay, so I guess I'm kind of back. That appointment happened, prior to that football game where I went to the ER. So let's go to the football game. End up going to the ER again. And then my gynecologist had heard, I called their office Monday and told them I was back in the ER with the same pain and everything. And that's where my gynecologist was like, hey, we need to figure this out. And so he asked me if I would go get some tumor markers taken. And even though the word tumor, I wasn't thinking like cancer, but that's kind of what he was doing, was getting checked for that, because he said there was a ton of, in my vaginal ultrasound, there was a ton of blood flow, more than that was showing up. And I guess that's an indicator that it can be cancer. So on the phone, he's like, hey, can you go in this afternoon and get some tumor markers, some blood drawn? I go, yeah, that's fine. And so I did. And it was really, honestly, I was frustrated just not knowing what's going on with my body and everything. But I went in to get that blood drawn, and the nurse, and then there was an intern with her too, she just like said, like, after I drew my blood, she was very somber. She's like, sweetheart, good luck with everything. And like kind of said it in like and that was kind of where I'm like, okay, what am I dealing with? And then I started kind of getting into my mind, and like, because my mind was starting to go to cancer. And
of course.
Yeah. And so I was kind of getting a little nervous then. So anyway, the very next day, my gynecologist calls me, and I was supposed to have an appointment to get that Tuesday. I had an appointment with a surgeon to get the appendix removed. And so, but those tumor markers came in, and they're supposed to be in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And mine was at a 221. And so that was a huge red flag right away. So,
did your gynecologist ever talk about taking out the cyst though too?
Yeah.
Like taking the cyst and the appendix at the same time?
Yep.
Okay.
It was going to be the cyst and the appendix. Those were that was the surgery that was going to be taking place, was the cyst. We got to get the cyst out, and we're just going to take the appendix out, because that's where your pain's kind of.
You were waiting to meet with a surgeon at this point. And then I'm assuming the test you had done was a CA 125 blood test.
Yeah, that actually sounds, I think that's right.
And sometimes for people who are listening, if you're starting your journey or in the middle of your journey, or you're learning this just now, because I feel like I think I learned this 10 years ago, but that blood test can actually show very high numbers if you have endo, but it also can show high numbers if you have cancer too. So just if anyone is listening, and I feel like Dani's probably going to tell me that in the next minute.
Yeah, nope, you're exactly right. So once they saw those tumor marker was very high, I met with the surgeon. He told me that too. And he said, and it's funny because my gynecologist said this surgeon is like, he's been told to be like one of the best in Des Moines. And he said, but he is very clear cut. He doesn't beat around, which is good. I mean, you want to hear what you're dealing with, no matter how scary it is. But he said, he'll tell you what you're dealing with. He'll get you out of your office and let's go, like, we'll get this, whatever. And he pretty much flat out said, with this high tumor marker, we're looking at ovarian cancer or endometriosis. So here, all I hear is cancer, and I kind of like, and then I hear this long word that I can say it now because I've said it so many times, but at first I couldn't even say it. I'm like, it's endo something, and it kind of just blurred out because all I heard was cancer. So, yeah. So that was all that was in my mind. And, in my mind, I'm just like, I came in here to schedule, I didn't tell him this, but I'm like, I was just coming in to schedule an appendicitis. Like, I'm like,
right.
It was just mind boggling. So, so at this point, he said, because of my age, he was giving me all the options, and he referred to it as, he said he's throwing everything at me, including the kitchen sink. He's like, but I'm just laying everything out for you. So he said he for sure thought we were going to have to take the one ovary that cyst was on. So that one was going to be gone. And then he said, if we go in there and see that it's ovarian cancer, they obviously need my permission, but he's like, we'll probably have to take out both of your ovaries, which then means no kids, if I ever want to have kids. And then he obviously mentioned, there's always the option of a full hysterectomy, but he highly, with someone my age who's young, he's like, in women, he's like, I try not to encourage that, because even if people say they never want kids, he's like, he's had times where he's had patients that wish they didn't do it so young.
Yeah.
And that wasn't, I didn't want a hysterectomy anyway. So, but, anyway, so I went from just planning an appendicitis treatment to, okay, you might have cancer, or this endo, whatever term you just said. I don't even know what that is. And I might not be able to have kids. So I walked out of there, and of course I was by myself, because I normally go to appointments by myself anyways. But yeah.
I'm so sorry. That was probably,
no, yeah. I mean,
it's still just a lot to take in
it was a lot to take
short
in.
Period of time.
Yeah. So I called my mom, and I couldn't even. I broke down in my car. Like, I was totally good in the parking lot. And then the second I heard my mom's voice on the phone, because she knew I had that appointment, she just wanted to know, like, hey, I get the surgery set up. And totally broke down. And then, it was crazy. But and that's the thing too, in that appointment, he said, we want to get you in as soon as we can. So he's like, we'd like to have you in this Friday, which was 3 days later. But he had to set up an oncologist to be there, a bowel surgeon, and then himself. Like, they all had to get 3 schedules to mesh to be there at the same time. He said, if we can't all be there this Friday, we'll get it for sure next Friday. In my mind, I was like, oh, I can't deal with this mentality for like 10 more days. So fortunately, they were leaving me in on that Friday. So they went in though. And
did he say any reason why he had to have a bowel surgeon there? I mean, did they give you any details?
He didn't go too much. He just said the reason the bowel surgeon had to be there was if sometimes they'll have complications when they get in there. And that's kind of as brief as he left it at. Okay. And so he has, in case, I don't know. I honestly don't know like the details of why, but he just said, we like to have a bowel surgeon there as well because of it. I think it was more if it was with cancer, the ovarian cancer. I don't know. I don't know. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Just curious. I just like to hear what the doctors tell people sometimes. Okay, so you have this surgery 3 days later. My goodness, this is a lot in 1 week.
Yeah, a very long week. Yeah, and at this time I was dog sitting for the same cousin that took me in back in July. She and her husband, they were on a trip with some of our friends in Ireland. So I was watching their dogs for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And and I'm not one to like tell people, especially something this like
private.
Like I'm not one to go and just like tell people, even friends, like close friends. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on yet. We don't know what's going to happen. So it was just all my family, my immediate family knew. that was it. But I had to tell my cousin because I was watching her dogs, and we were going to have to find alternate, someone else to take care of them because I was going to be in surgery and then not able to really get up for a little bit. So, so then of course, we got it all taken care of, but it was just, that week was just, it couldn't have, but I was supposed to go on that trip, to Ireland. So actually that's a blessing in disguise that I didn't go. Wow. And my friends and we talk about that because they're just like, Dani, can you imagine if this happened in Ireland, like overseas, you don't have your doctors. I mean, I don't know how the healthcare is over there. It could be fine, but it's just, when something like that, you want to be home,
Yeah.
So
wow.
It actually was a blessing in disguise that I was not able to go on that trip.
Right.
Bummed at first, but then you look you look back and you're like, no, like there's a reason I didn't go on that trip. So
I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. That's
I am too. 100%. Yep. So had the surgery. And I know, let's see. I remember the doctor saying, because he was saying endo's not a fun journey. Because I was asking questions about endometriosis too. Like I asked him more about I was worried about cancer, but I was also, and what was the other thing you said? And he was explaining what endometriosis is, and I was like, okay. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that sounds a lot better. But anyway, we obviously fast forward to surgery. It's stage 4 endometriosis. I remember my mom and sister were with me that day waiting for me while I was at the hospital to come out of surgery. And they told me later that he came out and said, yep, that was a messy one. So we don't know, like you said, you can't always tell when it all starts, the growth and everything. But for how messy he was saying he just thinks it probably could have been slow growing for a long time. And just when it gets to be that intense, it just the pain just shoots all at once because it just can't grow. It just can't take anymore. It just starts packing on those other organs. And so
were they able to get this? Did they take care of the cyst and leave your ovaries and all of that?
Yes, they did. So that was awesome because they went out and they said they didn't even have to take the ovary that the cyst was around. So I got to keep both ovaries. They left my appendix because my appendix was fine. They even went in there like, appendix is fine. So I still have my appendix. Yep. And then they took the cyst. He totally cleaned out. We were talking about this last time. Was it abrasion?
Ablation, yeah.
Ablation, yep. So went in and just really cleaned it out. They did that robot. They use those robots now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing. But so totally just cleaned me out.
And that was September? Is that when that ended up happening? September of 2019?
September of 2019, yep.
Okay.
Yep. So.
And just a couple things I want to touch on too while everybody's listening is if people want to take your organs and you're not comfortable with it, I lost an ovary in a tube because I didn't know better. I had a very large cyst and the doctor was like, we had to take the ovary and tube. And I found out, years later, potentially, and this isn't always the case, but a more skilled surgeon in laparoscopic surgery can usually leave the organs if they can work around it. Now, that's not always the case. So always make sure you ask those questions if you're listening. And then something else that I haven't really talked about or thought about, because I personally haven't done it, but if somebody says that they are, they have to take your ovaries or your uterus or something like that, ask about freezing your eggs if you are interested in having children. So again, these are all things that I never knew to ask, and that just even in the past couple of years, I've been learning about too. And I just want to pass that knowledge on to everyone who's listening, because these are just things I wish I knew. So yeah.
And I agree with you, Melissa, and that you brought up too. And I know my sisters mentioned that to me too, when they were talking about removing, they said, they talked about freezing eggs. And I know they also had to have, I think, did I have to give permission to my mom and sister that were with me that day? Like if they got in there and saw it was whatever, and they had to take both ovaries. Like I had told them if they have to take my ovaries, take my ovaries. Cause my thing was, I told them, I said, I don't have to have my ovaries to be a mom. yeah, so that was when it came down to it. I told him, I said, yep, take them both if you have to. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously I don't want you to,
for sure.
yeah, but
Yeah.
if that's what it comes down to, you go in there and it's cancer and you got to take out the whole thing to start, oh my gosh, like even to say like chemo treatment or whatever, like
Yeah.
it's like, do it,
Yeah.
So,
So
but
then
yeah,
how
they've
was
been
your recovery after that? I mean, so you wake up, you find out you have this endometriosis word that you don't really know what it is, and stage 4.
yeah.
How was your recovery after the surgery, and where are you now? How are you feeling?
Yeah, recovery was really good. The first two, probably about up to day 3, those days were kind of rough just because, I mean, it's amazing. You realize how much you use your core just to get out of bed.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing. I know I was recovering at my mom and dad's house. And so, like, I think the first day, for sure the first day, even probably into the second day, I definitely still needed help, like just getting up, laying down, rolling over to just get up.
Yeah.
But it's just because you had surgery and they literally just go in there. And I did for people listening too, they'll give you 2 options for incisions. So you can do the cesarean cut, like they do for a C-section. It's below the bikini line. He said some women like that because they don't like the scarring that you'll get on your stomach. And I honestly thought about that for a second, but then I also thought like, no, I really don't care that much about that. So maybe it's the older I get. If you would have asked me that like 10 years ago, I probably would have been like, oh yeah, but below the bikini line, but to hide it. But they said it was a lot longer recovery for that. So I went with the small 5 incisions. I mean, they're probably like tiny incisions. And there's 5 of them. One's like 2 to the left of my belly button, 1 directly above my belly button, and then 2 to the right. So, and even now they said within this, even now you can see them, you for sure can see them, but they get lighter as years go on. So, so that wasn't a big deal. I'm glad I went with that, but it's everybody's choice. I mean, he said it's probably 50-50 with preference of incision. So, and a lot of times too, and this honestly, he did say this, he said he thought with the smaller incisions and where the cyst was located and everything, it was going to be easier for him to just go and get it, as opposed to if he was working lower between, below the bikini line, he'd have to kind of like work up a little bit more. And he's like, I can do it, but it just kind of was a no-brainer for my situation. So, yep. And then, okay, so fast forward the rest of the week, you get to like 7 days post-surgery, and then 10 days, like I'm up. My mom being a nurse, like I said, she's really, I mean, she pushed me a lot to just like, hey, go walk around the kitchen. Like they have, a little circle thing I can do. So she kept me accountable for getting up and moving around. And I just wanted to anyway, because anyone that, even if you have the flu and you're bedridden for 2 to 3 days, like your back hurts, you feel lethargic, you just feel weak. And it's just, I can't handle that. It's so annoying. So I wanted to get up anyway. It hurt for a little bit, but it's just very sore. It was nothing. The pain was completely gone that I was experiencing before. And happy to say, like, up until this point, I still haven't had any of that pain at all.
That's
so
awesome.
So I know it. Yeah, it's just
such
a relief.
So you feel pretty much pain-free even on your period?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had actually my last period. I just started a week ago, and that was the first time I brought out a heating pad, and I didn't have it for very long, but it just was. It wasn't anything terrible, but it just was. I don't want to deal with the cramp right now, so it was just like it was just a fast relief thing. Because normally a lot of times I just put up with cramps. I think a lot of women do, and that's fine. But yeah, last Sunday I just like, nope, I'm not in the mood for this. So I just got a heating pad out to kind of just relieve it, and it did really fast. So, yeah, this is the first time I've used a heating pad for a period in a long time. So it was good. But I've told my mom and sisters, I'm like, I don't even want to say this out loud, because they check in and ask like, hey, how are you feeling with everything? Have you had any symptoms again? I was like, no. And I said, I hate to say it out loud, but like, I feel really good. Like, it just
don't hate to say it out loud. That's amazing.
I know. No, it is. It's just one of those
I
super
know.
but yeah,
I
so
know.
but
Right.
at
You
the
don't
same
want to
time,
jinx it. I see what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I am like I'm pretty much starting a clean slate. So, you know, and as you know, and he told me, he's like, you'll probably have another surgery, maybe 2 or 3 more. He's like, it just depends how fast it grows. He's like, every woman is different with endo. So who knows? I mean, that's, as you know, we're anyone listening to this, we're all on the same journey. It's different for everyone, but it also is similar in different ways too. So if that makes sense.
No, for
Um,
sure. Well, I'm
yeah.
so
So,
happy to hear that you're feeling so well. And,
oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
you were able to kind of, it was an intense year, it sounds like, for you, but you're really
Yep.
coming out on the other side of it. So that's really great. Well, good. Is there anything else that you want to add, or tips or anything you've changed in your life because of endo?
I will say, so I've been researching a little bit. They say caffeine, alcohol, I mean, just for a lot of things in life, like just a healthy diet. So
Yeah.
I tried doing like dairy. I try to eat somewhat well, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, I try to anyway, but I try to do that. I do like coffee. And so that's kind of something I'm not really, I don't drink.
That's a deal breaker for you.
Yeah. And I don't drink coffee like every day, but I drink coffee, I mean, most days.
Yeah.
So probably at least 4 or 5 days a week. So, but it's not, I mean, if it was really hurting me or affecting me, or I could tell symptoms, like I could drop coffee. But it hasn't been. So I'm like,
Right.
well, I'm drinking
Yeah.
coffee then.
Yeah.
So, and then, yeah, so I guess for anyone listening, just research. I mean, people, they put things on, just try it out. I mean, everything's different. Like I said, they said caffeine can sometimes, like bring on symptoms, but it hasn't necessarily for me.
That's great.
You know what I mean? So I guess just research. Like I said, I'm still learning. And when I came across your page, like I am not a person to come on a podcast or talk about this.
Right.
But the only reason I'm doing this is because, like you said, the most comforting thing is like, okay, I have this, what they qualify as a disease that I'm going to have the rest of my life. So what am I dealing with, you know? And I remember I asked my surgeon, because he was kind of talking to me in a somber way when at my 2-week post-op. And I go, hey, like, I'm really relieved I don't have ovarian cancer. Like, I am like over the moon happy about that. And I said, but and I kind of was just front with him. Like, I just like, from your tone, I just like, should I be concerned about something? Like, what am I dealing with? And he said, painful intercourse is a common thing. And then, you might have a hard time conceiving biologically. So, you know, and I mean, yeah, that's not fun, but you know, if women are having painful intercourse, they have what's called pelvic floor therapy. And so that's an avenue I'm going to go down. Probably. I have a friend who has endo. Actually, I found out one of my best friends growing up, she had it, and I didn't know until our parents go to the same church, and they're like, oh yeah, well, I won't say her name just because I don't know if she wants me to name drop, and I wouldn't, but so-and-so has endo and has had it for about 2 years now. This is like my best friend growing up, and I had no idea. So she's been awesome. She's been a huge like advocate for it. She's been helping me, telling me like what she uses. Honestly, the most comforting thing is just reading up on it, because there's so many women out there that have it. It's just not, I think doctors are still just learning a lot about it, you know, because it's just not talked about. So that's the one reason I'm coming on here, is because it's just comforting knowing someone else is going through this. Julianne Hough, you know, she has it. Halsey, the artist, has it, you know, so it's, and they talk about it, which is awesome. Like, they're using their platform to talk about it, because it's just important, you know, it's just something that needs to be talked about. Because I think then sorry, I know I'm rambling, but I will mention something else too. Is another thing is, I ended up seeing my ER doctor. I ran into him again, and I told him, because he was the one that sent me home saying a pre-appendicitis and sent me home with ibuprofen. And he's like, oh yeah, what did that end up, were you fine? I was like, I ended up getting diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, and he was just like, oh, he's kind of like taken back. And but I felt like I should tell him, because if he gets another female in there with similar
Absolutely.
symptoms, I hope he remembers, like, oh yeah, I had that one gal that ended up having endo. Let's check that out, instead
Yeah.
of,
Good for you. Good for you. I feel like there needs to be so much education, especially with the ER doctors, because so many people with endo end up in the ER because the pain can be
yep,
unbearable. So
yeah,
that's fantastic that you told him. I love
yeah,
that you were like,
yep,
hey, FYI, you made a mistake. It's okay,
yeah,
but
right.
you
But
know,
yeah, you don't want anyone to go through this, or you want them to figure
no.
out what's going on with them the quickest way they can.
Yeah.
So if you can skip out on a bunch of tests that don't need to be taken,
Yeah.
like, it is what it
Unnecessary
is. So
tests. Exactly.
unnecessary tests, yep, and
And they should
time
have told you had a cyst. I mean, I can't believe
that,
they
yeah,
didn't.
that threw me. I was just like, I had no idea I even had a cyst. And he goes, yeah, and he had it on his chart right there from the ER visit. And
It just
yeah.
oh,
So,
never
and here's
ceases
another
to
thing
amaze
too,
me.
is my the gynecologist of mine, he's been a family friend for years. My mom used to work with him back when she was doing OR stuff, and really, I mean, he's a good family, but he vouched, and I know he was like pushing to, like, he just was amazing, because he was a godsend too, because he retired 3 months later. So, and not to say another gynecologist wouldn't, but I think just because of our family relationship,
Of
and
course.
he really got the ball rolling. So if you have and gynecologist, they do care. So just, I don't know, just,
Keep
yeah,
advocating for, keep fighting
keep
for
it.
yourself, keep advocating
Yep.
for yourself. And there's a lot of gynecologists that aren't as great as Danny's was, that they just don't understand the disease. So if you don't feel comfortable with what you're hearing, you have to keep pushing on and find a doctor who will listen to you, who understands the disease. That's my
Yeah.
biggest thing. I talk about it, I think, on every podcast, because there's just been so many bad stories about people going to gynecologists and not getting the care that they deserve.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, just to piggyback off that, just go until you get it figured out, because you will get something figured out. If
yeah,
it's endo or not, you'll get it figured out. But don't just stop at one doctor saying, nope, it's this, you're okay, it'll go away, here's some antibiotics. Because the antibiotics were like Band-Aids. They were. I mean,
yeah,
so I thought, they were doing its job, and, it took away the pain, but it always,
came back.
when the problem doesn't get taken care of, it's going to come back. So,
Yep. Yep. Well, Dani, thank
yep,
you so much for sharing your story. And I feel like it's extra special because you said this isn't something that you would normally do. So coming out of your comfort zone and coming on and talking about what you've gone through, and what you're going through and how you feel so much better, is just, it's going to give so many people hope. We really appreciate it.
yeah. Well, thanks, Melissa. Thanks for doing this. I think it's awesome that you are just letting people even have a voice, to just tell their story, because sometimes you don't. You just get stuck in your own thoughts, or you got to try to find people to reach out and
Yeah.
to talk to that have it. But so yeah, keep the endo page up, because it's that, like I said, I found yours because I found a bunch of other ones and I just kind of disregarded them.
Oh,
But yours was
that's so
very informational.
nice.
No, I know, but it's just very informational. It's just like, you put posts up that it's like, yes, that's me, that's me, that's me, so yeah, I think it's great you're doing this and letting women just vouch for other women to get this figured out. So
Well, thank you.
um
Thank you for the kind words. I promise everyone I didn't pay Dani to say all of those nice
no,
things.
she didn't. She did not.
But with that being said, I agree with you. And the community is such an important part to remember. You're not alone. There's so many people suffering with this disease. I know you feel alone no matter what part of the journey you're on. Look, I'm years and years in and I feel alone sometimes, but then I remember all of the wonderful people that you could talk to in a second. And that helps me plug. I started a Facebook group for this podcast specifically. So the guests that have been on it, or people who listen to it, it's very intimate right now. It's small, but I will link it below. I'd love for anyone who's listening to join. It's just a place where we can talk about the episodes and what was discussed on it, and or support each other. So Dani, thank you again. And everybody else, I
Well,
hope you're feeling well and stay well.